Class. Today is March 30th. I want to begin by saying I hope all of you are healthy and you will remain healthy. Thank you for your positive comments you've been sending me through the email. What I'd like to do is to review the due dates. Some of you had a couple questions, okay? The take-home exam and article number 2, the one about cheating in the small town in Kansas, plagiarism. They are due on the 8th of April. You can simply email them to me. The last paper, The Poor Scholar, is not due until the end of the month, April 29th, and that could also be emailed to me. What I'd like to do now is just take 5 to 10 minutes to give you a quick overview of the course. I'm going to stress a central theme of the course. I'm not going to go off on details, but the central theme of the course was to show you the evolution, the growth of public schools in this country from the time of the Puritans up through the end of the 20th century. As you recall, in the very early stages of education, some of the small Puritan communities usually had an elderly lady or a student, graduate student, who basically would teach the kids the basic 3 R's using the Bible or Bible stories for reading purposes. You remember also New England was the first state to pass the anti-Satan law or anti-deluder law. The purpose was to teach children to read at an early age so they can then in turn read the Bible and thwart the devil. And you remember too, in New England, when the population reached a certain point, approximately 100 families or more, basically the local town or township or borough had to provide a small school, okay? The perennial Little Red Schoolhouse came out of this procedure. And gradually, as we get into the 1800s, most states were beginning to pass requirements for the children to attend school. They varied from state to state. Some states may have required so many hours of instruction, so many days. There still was a lack of standardization, but they were moving in that direction by the time of the Civil War. Okay, after the Civil War, there was a major immigration from different countries, especially Ireland. The proliferation of the young people was an enormous challenge. There simply weren't enough schools, enough teachers to go around. So what many states did, including New Jersey, they developed normal schools. This is how Rowan University started. The normal school was kind of like a junior college, but it really wasn't a college. After 2 years of instruction, teachers could go into the classrooms and begin instruction. It was a stopgap measure to deal with the problem of massive immigration. Horace Mann had predicted in the 19th century that public schools were good for a number of reasons, not just because we educated people on how to read and write and spell and so forth, but he believed if people developed a skill, they'd be more inclined to get a job, become responsible citizens of the community. As Horace Mann predicted, good schools produce good communities. And as we saw in class, even today, when a couple moves into a new town looking for a house, the first thing they often ask the realtor, how are the schools? As we get into the 20th century, there were still some challenges to public schools, good, bad, or indifferent. A major decision, which we didn't get a chance to cover in class, was the Kalamazoo case. Okay, this occurred about 10 years after the Civil War. By that time, all states had requirements for children to basically attend school. But Kalamazoo and a few other cities wanted to have high schools, required high schools. And this was challenged. It went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that communities could tax the public to provide for public education at the secondary level. This was a major, major milestone. Again, in the 20th century, there was a challenge from Oregon. The governor of Oregon, Governor Pierce, believed that all elementary students should attend a public school. He made it illegal for parents to send their children to a parochial school, Christian school, Catholic school, Quaker school, etc. This was challenged, went up to the Supreme Court, major decision. I don't give you many to memorize, but this is a major decision. In Pierce versus the Society of Sisters, 1925, Supreme Court said that parents, not the state, would decide where to send their children. Parents could keep the children at home, homeschool them, or they could send them to the school of their choice. This was a victory, okay, for the parents' rights over education. Also in the 20th century, when I went to school, the standard pattern for education was kindergarten, then you had a K to 8, and then you had a high school. Some of your parents and grandparents probably used this pattern. We saw in the middle to late 1900s, this changed. More and more school districts went to a K to 12 district, and they broke it down into usually a preschool program, and then you usually had a program of about 1 to 5 or 1 to 6, followed by a middle school, and then you had the high school. We talked in class as to why the middle school was developed. A lot of it had to do with physiological changes of children. As you know, some of the problems that were common at the high school level have filtered down to the middle school, as in the case of bullying fellow students, which we discussed in class. Biology had a major part. The reduction of puberty, okay, especially in girls, from 14, 15, 16 down to 11 and a half. It was another reason for the growth of the middle schools. The feeling was that the middle school would be a transitional school which teach kids how to adapt and do well at the high school level. You had a homeroom teacher, as in high school. Also, you had more than one teacher who taught everything. You usually had several different teachers, making it easier for kids to adapt to the high school procedure. In the 20th century, the increase in not only high school population, but college, okay, enormously increased. For example, according to your textbook, about 110 years ago, you had 500,000 people attending some form of college. Today, again, according to your textbook, there's over 16 million people attending college. Enormous change. And a lot of it just came about through benevolent policies by the government. Many soldiers returning from World War II could take advantage of the GI Bill. They could get a free or practically a free college education. The use of internet courses, which you're familiar with, grants and loans. Many county colleges, if your income is below a certain level, you could attend the county college free and clear with no tuition reimbursements. So I just wanted to basically give you a brief overview. Again, I would ask you maybe in your last paper that you sent to me, we don't have time to do a full-time assessment as I do with my class every year, but I'd ask you just to jot down in your last email to me, when you hand in your last paper, just your own opinion. I'd like to know what you thought about the 3 articles we did in class, okay? Generation, I never heard the word no, the one on plagiarism, and finally, the one on the poor scholar. If you could give me a brief update, very short, a few sentences, what you liked, what you didn't like about the articles, you think I should continue those articles next year. Again, it was a pleasure working with you. I'm sorry we have to work under these circumstances, but we have to make the best of a given situation. Thank you. Stay healthy. God bless, and keep in touch.